We're going to continue this, only this looks slightly more advanced than the other one. So we're going to factor the standard form, same thing. So this is not in standard form yet, so my first step is to put it into standard form. Then I'm going to factor it using snowflake. Break it up using zero product property and solve individually. So my first step is to put it in standard form. So 2x squared plus 11x minus 21 equals 0. Now I'm going to set up my snowflake. Remember what we have to do? We have to do our a times the c, and that goes on the top, the negative 42. And b goes on the bottom, the 11 goes downstairs. Remember that the 2x has to go in the wings. We're just looking at that component there, not the square, just the 2 and the x. So I ask myself this: what two numbers multiply to this, negative 42, but add to 11? Oy. So I might need to guess and check a little bit. Okay, I know 42, I can do 1 and 42, and you don't have to write this down. And one of them needs to be negative, probably this guy, but that's too small or too large because that's a positive 41. Now let me try another 6 and 7, right? But one of them needs to be negative, maybe the other one. But that's still, 6 minus 7 is a 1. Doesn't work. So there has to be another pair of numbers. Well, 3 and 14 work. And you might need to have just checked this with your calculator, dividing things out. But one of these needs to be negative, so the 3 needs to be negative. Okay, now don't forget that when we have an a, like so, that this is like a fraction, and so it needs to be reduced. So it can be reduced by 2, so x and 7. So my two factors are this: 2x minus 3, which is what it says right there. And then the other one is the x plus the 7. Altogether, it equals 0. So my first step, besides correcting that x, that should be an a, or they should both be the same variable, so it doesn't actually matter which one you change. I'm going to subtract 15 from both sides in order to put this in standard form. So here's my setup for the snowflake. As a reminder, the 3 times the negative 15 goes on the top, and the negative 4 goes on the bottom. The b goes on the bottom. And now we find my factors of negative 45 that sum to negative 4. If you don't see it immediately, you might need to have guessed and checked. I could have done 9 and 5, and 3 and 15, 45 and 1. So those are a couple options, or all my options. And here we see that the 5 minus the 9 is negative 4, and 5 times negative 9 is negative 45. Now, the only fraction here that does reduce is the one on my left, which could be your right. So a on top and negative 3 downstairs. So there are my two factors. A minus 3 times, and the other one is 3a plus 5, all equal to 0. Now we use the zero product property here. A minus 3 is 0, or 3a plus 5 is 0. Now, hopefully some of you actually see that there's a shortcut from the snowflake to the answer. I don't know if some of you see that yet, but it is there. Now this one here is 3a is negative 5. And divide to get negative 5/3. We can check using our calculators or graphing it. But here are my two solutions right there. Let's look at another method, or excuse me, another type of problem. And some of you might recognize that this is a difference of squares. There are a couple different ways to solve this problem. And snowflake is not the easiest way. And nor is factoring. Factoring is not the easiest way either. But I am going to solve it by factoring because later this week we'll show you how to solve something like this without it, which you probably already have an instinct about what to do. All right, so this is already in standard form because everything's equal to 0 here and the exponents decrease. Now I do recognize that this is a difference of squares. I notice that's a difference of squares. So for those of you who recognize that, it goes quick like this. b minus 4 times b plus 4 equals 0. So just to show you what rule we're using, and I'll write it over on the side there, the rule says this, that if I have a difference of squares, like a squared minus b squared, that will always factor to conjugates. A plus b times a minus b. Like that, no matter what, as long as you have perfect squares. So now the zero product property says each one splits up, like so, to equal to 0. So b is either 4 or negative 4. We can check our answer real quick, and I'll just do that verbally. When I put a positive 4 here, I get 16. Minus 16 is 0. When I put a negative 4, I get a positive 16 also. Minus 16 is also 0. So that's a quick check. So on number 6, please tell your neighbor, how does this factor using the difference of two squares rule? So the conjugates here are 2x minus 5 times 2x plus 5. As a reminder, this guy here square roots, this guy here square roots, and you do conjugates. Now the zero product property, and that will split it up, of course, to be 2x minus 5, 2x plus 5, and both equal 0. Add 5, divide by 2. Over here we subtract 5, divide by 2. So plus or minus 5 halves is what you actually get. Plus or minus 5 halves. Again, we can check our solution using graphing calculator or just by calculation. The last thing we're going to look at is to see context or in applications. So suppose you are building a storage box that has a volume of 4,368 cubic inches. The length of the box will be 24 inches. The height of the box will be 1 inch more than its width. So we don't know the width, nor do we know the height. But they do have a relationship with each other. Find the height and the width of the box. All right, so what to do? I'm going to draw a box-ish over here. I don't know the exact dimensions, but it does seem to be a rectangular box of some kind. So when I do draw the box, it's going to look something similar to this. Like so. It says that the height of the box is 1 inch more than the width. So if I call this W, since I don't know what it is, then the height is W plus 1. Now it does say that the length of the box is 24. So I'll put 24 inches over there. And if you have forgotten, the double apostrophe there means, or the quote means inches. But a volume formula looks like this. Volume is length times width times height. And in this case, we know what the length is, and we know what the volume is. So I can substitute the volume amount in. The length is going to be 24. The width is the width, W, and the height is W plus 1. Now there's a little bit more space in the other box, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply stuff out and show the work over there. So 4368 is equal to 24w squared plus 24w. So while I'm here, I'm going to divide everything by 24. Divide each term by 24. That kills that. So 182 is equal to w squared plus w. Subtract 182 from both sides, and I get this. So that's standard form. And now if I start to snowflake it, I understand that negative 182 is an unusual number. I haven't seen that much. And I need to factor it in order to get a 1 when I sum them up. W's go on the wings there. So after I guessed and checked, I got 13 and 14. One of them needs to be negative. That's the 13. Okay, now, this now splits up into two problems. Well, I'll show you the factoring first, and then split them equals 0, and W plus 14 equals 0. So W is 13, or W is negative 14. And I did do a check. 13 times 14 times 24 is 4,368. All right, your turn. Take a look at number 8. Just to walk you through this one. A flat roof is rectangular, so I had a W here for my width, and it says that it is 4 feet greater than the width is the length, so 4 plus W there. Together they multiply to 96, so that's my area equals length times width. So I substitute the 96 here, W and W plus 4 go there. And when we put it in standard form, I get W squared plus 4W minus 96. Snowflake that to get my two numbers, 12 and negative 8. And when I solve each one individually, negative 12 drops out because I can't have a negative width. So 8 is my only option, so then it means add 4 to get 12. So coincidentally, I'm back to like the two numbers I had over here. One's negative though. But that's just a coincidence. There's no necessary connection that both of these are going to be the same as both of these. So don't just say, oh, look, just take the opposite of that and I get the other answer. That's just a coincidence.